Okay, today we are going to do a recap, but a lot of new stuff and some practical review of Hilchos Tevilas Keilim. I'm not reviewing everything today, but we are going to touch on different aspects that come out from various seifim and halachas that don't appear inside anywhere, pretty much, until later achronim. Okay, so one question comes up, you go shopping and you buy food that's in packaging, like cans or bottles. I don't know, Snapple, Coca-Cola. Can you drink directly from it? We're talking about glass and metal, right? Plastic, we're assuming, and wrappers are definitely not going to be chayev. They're not okay. So wrappers are not a kli. That has other ramifications in different areas of halacha. And plastic, we assume the vast majority says plastic is not chayev. That is pretty much the accepted halacha in Klal Yisrael, without a question. Again, some are definitely machmar on plastic because it could be melted like glass, but Chazal were not around when plastic existed. And okay, so let's go on. So what do we do with cans and bottles? So with cans, most say it's not an issue because when it's sealed closed, it doesn't have a din of a kli until you open it. So that's already one reason why the minhag is to be mekel with cans. How that applies to Shabbos, so some are machalik that just because it's a kli, it might not be a kli for, again, it's a subtle difference, but there is what to be machalik. We're not going to discuss all the in detail, but basically some are machalik. When it comes to Hilchos Shabbos, it's already a kli, and it's already been formed, and now you're just opening what was already a kli. But for Tuma and Tara, or for at least for Hilchos Tevilas Keilim, it's not chayev, and that's also when you include other reasons. By Tevilas Keilim, it's disposable. We're going to get into all these things, but when you put everything together, and it's again, is it a chiyuv, is it a mitzvah? It's a different study why the minhag is clearly for cans, not to worry about it. What about bottles?
So the point is that a can, it only became clean when you opened it.
Correct. L'maisa, we say most.
So it's not chayev in tzvila.
Right. Even if it was you bought it from a goy, right? When you opened it, you were the Jew and you were creating the kli. So the kli essentially would never belong to a non-Jew.
According to that, you should be able to reuse cans without.
Yes, you can reuse. If you follow that premise, you can reuse the cans without tvila, and that is the most popular custom l'maisa. What about bottles? So the minhag in general is to be mekel and to drink directly from the bottle. You buy a glass Coca-Cola or tastes best from the glass, or a Snapple, whatever it is. The minhag is to drink directly from it, and it's not a problem. Igros Moshe. So there in Chelik Beis Ben, so he says because when you buy it, it's batel to the food. No one's selling you the can of Snapple or the drink or whatever it is, grape juice, whatever you're buying for the dish. Everyone's selling you're paying for the food. Obviously built into the price is the distribution and whatever. But okay, even if the can costs more, that's not, even if the shipping costs more, like by water. The point is, it's you're buying the item, and the kli is so batel to the item, you're not really buying it, or it doesn't have a din of a kli, at least for Hilchos Tevilas Keilim, and therefore it's as if when it comes in your hands, and you open it, and you're going to be machshiv the kli, you're keilu creating the kli in Jewish hands. So that's as far from Rav Moshe, also brought down in Or Letzion. Other reasoning why it's okay is Sriti Aish says he recommends when you buy it, have in mind you're not owning the kli. That's one way to get around it. It's a chumrah.
So this is just to drink it the first time.
This is to drink it the first time, or, well, depending on which reasoning you give, it might help you only the first time. It might, like the Igros Moshe helps you forever, but we're going to give a couple of reasons that might only help the first time.
But if you pay a deposit on the kli, it's not really yours.
Another reason given by Mishnah Halachos, Pri Tavua, and others is that if the kli would be chayav, you have no intention to buy an iser. No one's going to put themselves in a situation where they're going to put themselves into an iser. So it's mukhrach from the very beginning. Either it's mutter to use the kli, or if it's aser, if it would need Tevilas Keilim and you're not going to take it, you're not owning it. When you go to the store, you're buying the grape juice and you're not buying the kli itself. No one cares. They're going to give it to you. They're going to be a mafkar to you. But it's built in. You don't own that kli. That's a svara given by some. Another one is that, so some point out, for the first time, when you empty a kli, it's never a problem. It's b'shev al ta'aseh, per se. You didn't put the drink, and this has other ramifications for other halachas. Hopefully we'll get there today. When you get the drink, you didn't put it in a goyish kli that you're now owning. It was put there for you. So even if the kli is chayav in tevila for all future uses, right now it was already there. So it's like b'shev al ta'aseh, and there's no chiyuv derabanan. Again, it's a whole chakira by the mitzvah Tevilas Keilim. We touched upon it. Is it mamish a chiyuv, and it's aser, maybe only derabanan, but still completely aser to use it until you go into the mikvah, or immediately there's a chiyuv or a mitzvah from Chazal to hurry and dip it. And Lamaisa, it's aser. Everyone agrees it's aser to even use it once. If you buy a kli from a store, you can't. There's no one-time freebie. The first time you buy it from the store, everyone can use it once until you take it to the mikvah. No such.
Common misconception.
So some people, I didn't know that there's such a common misconception, but apparently there is. There is zero heter anywhere in the world, no posek, no one does it say you can buy it, you get a one-time freebie from the store, use it once, and then you have to go to the mikvah. From day one, you have to go to the mikvah immediately, and there's no heter to use it once, except for, we are going to discuss numerous heterim, but it's not an automatic freebie. If there's a mikvah across the street or in your city, you cannot use it until you go to the mikvah. Again, maybe there's Shabbos, maybe this, that. You're a guest. Okay, we'll get to the few interesting heterim. So here's one of them. You buy it from in the drink or the food and is in the jar, and for the first time, there's no chiyuv to remove it, or removing the food for the first time is not considered a chashuv enough shimush, or there's no chiyuv, depending, who says it or how you want to learn it. But this is brought down Lamaisa by the Mahar El Diskin, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and Minchas Asher, that lechatchila, there's no chiyuv whatsoever to remove it. Emptying it, generally, most of them say emptying is not considered a shimush that requires you. Exactly, I define that, whatever. And so Yabia Omer, he also writes, the minhag is to drink from it. That's clearly the minhag, is to drink from it. And there's Sheva Taseh. He actually throws in the concept of lischora. He points, he's one of the materium for a restaurant. Again, it's not the best practices. We discussed by a restaurant, some are meko lechatchila to own a restaurant and not take the dishes for tevila, because it's considered for business. So here too, he says, when you're buying your Snapple, the store guy who's selling it to you, it's still on the level of for business. You're not using the kli or buying the kli because you want the kli and now using it. It comes that way, it's for business. Now, maybe for the subsequent uses, it's a bigger issue. And then he also points out glass is all durabanan, and so you have all these things that we mentioned, and he says, and that's the minhag and it's mutter. However,
the way I've heard it said is that really you're emptying it with saying totaling it. Mali if I empty it slowly, Mali if
that's another way to put it. That's not what they write, but that's another one. Is you're emptying it, but you're drinking from there. Okay, but that's your way of emptying it, so that you could tovel it. Okay, very nice. Now, Rav Shechter says it's aser. He's the only one that I know that says it's aser to drink from it. You actually said it's quoted in his name. It might just be a chumrah, I don't know. But it's quoted in his name. He says you have to empty it into a separate cup and you cannot drink from the bottle. And it's also quoted that the Chazon Ish was machmer. Doesn't mean that he held it's a problem. But Chaim Kanievsky, they quote him as saying it's mutter. But okay, so that ends that topic. Let's talk about another topic. Okay, so we know glass is chayav derabanan. So what's included in glass? So it's pretty. Most of us know what glass is.
Touch on the disposable idea.
You will get to the disposable, Leonardo, or you'll let me know. Just a light topic to break up. Glass. So some examples of glass, just to be aware. Pyrex is glass. Corel is glass. Tempered glass is glass. IKEA, for example, some people shop in IKEA. You need to check what the material is made out of. Some of their dishes are made from ceramic, from porcelain, whatever, like most dishes are, or many dishes are. But some of theirs, and therefore it's putter except unless you say glazed. We're going to discuss kimat all dishes that are ceramic nowadays are glazed. So generally, so we'll get to that in a sec. But IKEA has a whole line of tempered glass. So don't get confused. You have to check is it made from ceramic or is it actually tempered glass. Duralex is glass and crystal, of course, is glass. Okay. Plastic, we mentioned. The minhag is clear, but the only one that I saw that says it's chayav is Minchas Yitzchak, but that's not okay. Glazed. Okay, so this is important. So china, porcelain, pottery, bone china, they're all bikar. The main substance is clay, ceramic, whatever. It's all mutter. Doesn't need tevila. The question is when it's glazed. So first of all, what is glazed? Just so we understand. Glazed is basically you have a tub of water with, let's say, powder or the silica suspended. It's like a powder. It's like dirty water of it gets mixed in there. It has a few other materials in there, but basically that's what it is. You dip it in this water, and so now you have a super, super thin film of this powder silica on your dish, and then you fire it up. You put it into a hot oven, and then that's what glazes it. A kiln, or whatever it is exactly. A kiln. And ever notice, by the way, do you know why always the bottom of your dish, or part of it, will never be glazed? Because if you put it in the oven or the kiln on the shelf or on the rack and you glaze it, it will fuse to the rack. And not only will you now have to break and throw away your dish, the whole shelf will probably become garbage, which is worth a lot more than your pottery mug or whatever it is. So anyway, but basically all of your mugs and all of your plates, if they're china or this or that, or ceramics, they're generally all glazed, and you have this issue. Now, as far as I know, I don't see any difference from one item to another. Bone china just has some bone mixed in, actual animal bone mixed into the ceramics, yeah? And it makes it so it's more of a clear or delicate look and a little more expensive usually. So anyways, but can you see that? Okay, so we discussed if something is covered, right? We learned that in the beginning of the Seifim. So Lamaisa, we hold if it's covered with metal, again, it's a machlokas inside, outside, with the bracha, not a bracha, ayin sham. But if it is coated, the halacha is clear, with metal, it needs to be tovot, right? However, there is an opinion, the pre-Torah, it's a minority opinion, that says, pre-Torah, by the way, is the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. He holds if there's a layer of glass, you can see a thick layer of glass all around your dish, he holds its pater. Because pater from Tevila. Only metal that surrounds it is chayav. Because metal is daraisa in general, at least the 6. When it comes to glass, it's not exactly a gzera, but it's almost like a gzera type of thing. Where if the Chazal were chayav glass only because we're afraid you might learn from glass that if glass is pater, so metal is pater. But if your essence of the kli is ceramic or metal or whatever, not ceramic, if the essence of your kli is ceramic, and then you have a thick layer of glass around it, you see the glass, but everyone's going to call that basically a ceramic dish. That's what his svara is. And you're not going to come to now think that if you didn't tovel the ceramic dish that has glass around it, now you're going to come to think that not even metal needs to be. So I believe it's a minority opinion. I'm pretty sure about that. But that is his opinion. So that also might tie in to the issue of glazing. So I'll just point out, if you're going to look into the sources, the Igros Moshe, Aruch HaShulchan, the Chida, the Knesset HaGedolah, and the Knesset HaGedolah and the Chida says the minhag was not to tovel not by glazed dishes. The Aruch HaShulchan said in his time and where he lived, the minhag was to tovel glazed ceramics. Who else says there's no need? It's the Yaibitz, and in our Piskei Tshuva it's quoted, Shalmazal Manorabach, Yabia Omer. So they all say there's absolutely no need. And the reason is, the main reason they give is because, one of the reasons they give is you can't, the whole issue is you can remelt it. So it's doma to metal. Well, if you break your pottery that has a thin little glaze on it, you're going to have nothing there to melt and nothing to work with. So that's similar, but perhaps different to the pre-Torah. I only say that is because can you apply the principle of sfik sveka l'kula? So, but anyways, also the glass of the glaze is, in my opinion, invisible. It's basically microscopic. In halacha, we generally don't go by microscopic. You see the glaze, but you don't see the glass. And it's not it's perhaps not likely Chazal had in mind when they were gozer glass, that they were gozer an invisible glass, that you know it's there because of the glaze. But no matter how you bend the glass, your ceramic or china, you're never going to see a thin layer, transparent, anything that resembles glass. It's just always going to just be shiny. So the Aruch HaShulchan and Melamed Lahoyel say it's good to be a machmer. And there are poskim who do say that, again, I don't know what level of should, but they say you should tovel without a bracha, clearly without a bracha. That's the Rav Yashiv, Ben Ishchai, Chut Shani, and some modern poskim will tell you it's better. And there are communities where it's more common to tovel, and people will say, yeah, of course I tovel all my ceramics. I wonder if they all do tovel everything. But anyways, and there are some communities where very few people do. So that's, I think, and that takes care of the glaze. Okay. We touched upon previously snow. I just want to clarify. We're going to see this more when we get to Reish Aleph, it's coming up, about Hilchos Mikvos. So there it's clear, according to the Shulchan Aruch, lechatchila, you're allowed to use snow. You can take your fork, a glass, any item you want. You just make sure it's completely immersed underneath and surrounded by you don't have to worry about air bubbles, but you do have to make sure it's somewhat powdery so that the ice is all around it, and that's fine. You still need to have mem se'ah, but you could be mistarif the whole mountain. As long as it's chibur, connected, you can be mistarif, doesn't matter how thick it is, as long as it's surrounded by ice, no problem. It's the Ramah who writes that when the Mishnah says you're allowed to use snow, that's only means you can carry it there, and so you don't have an issue of mayim she'uvim, but you can't use it as snow. You have to use it as water. So you can only use it once it melts. So you can build a mikveh that way, but you can't use it in its state. I think he says that only I think it's only lechatchila, he says that. So bishat adchak, I believe all poskim would write, even for Ashkenazim, bishat adchak, you could use snow. Now, you might have to retovel it afterwards when you get to a town, like that's if you're traveling, you get to a town with a mikveh. It could be you have to retovel it without a bracha, but that's, it comes up, the Bir Halacha talks about it. He says, if you're in a place where there's so this many poskim do say, if you're in a place where you don't have water and you only have snow, so in that case, you can lachatchila tovel anything derabanan. You can do Netilas Yadayim with the bracha. In cold snow, even according to the Ramah, if there's no water around. That's Beferish in the Bir Alach, and I think the Magen Avram and others. Taz. Anyways, so therefore it works. And glass can also work lechatchila if you're in a place where you can't get to a liquid mikvah. Okay, so that's that. Many times you go to a mikvah and they have these baskets for you. These are plastic crates or whatever. This doesn't matter what the material is. Since there are holes and the water seeps through, again, that's called chibur, and it's connected, no problem. It could even be closed per se, because the water goes right through. If you could even put it into a cloth bag that the water goes right through, and have it closed on all sides, and just dip it in there and dip it right out. Plastic bags are not porous, so don't do that with plastic. But if you have a porous cloth bag, or some kind of a mesh, whatever, that's no problem. If it's closed and the water doesn't go through, so we're going to see in Reish Aleph when you need to, when you don't need to, but there still needs to be, obviously water needs to get in so that it completely covers your dish on all sides, inside and out. But as far as the halachos of mikvos are, as long as there's even if the kli that you put it into is not permeable, as long as there's an opening of kishvoferet hanod, take your two fingers and move them around. That's called the shear of shveret hanod. According to Rav Chaim Na, it's 3.8 or 4 centimeters. Chazon Ish, it's 5. But generally, that's not the type of bag you go to the mikveh with. But yeah, if you're going to bring okay. What else? Let's talk quickly about electric appliances. So, do you need to or not? So, most poskim say electric appliances. Now, obviously, we're talking about metal appliances. We're not. What else is it? We're not talking about like a giant oven. We're talking about a kli. That's what I meant to say. We're talking about appliances that are actually holding and touching the liquid, right? So, or food. In other words, as opposed to an entire refrigerator or an entire oven. That's not what we're talking about. So anyway, why wouldn't an oven need? Oh, you mean if you put your bread directly to it, it's not called a kli.
You take the rack.
So racks you would need to. An oven itself, I don't think is considered a kli for these purposes. Anyways, but toaster ovens are a question. So we'll just mention. Now you mentioned toaster oven. I'll just.
The racks did too.
So those racks would need to. What about the toaster itself? Let's say there is no rack and it's all a pop-up and it's all one unit. So some people have a built-in. That's rare, but some people have a built-in toaster. You pull it in and out of your wall. I've seen that. So it's totally mechubar, and most would say that's okay. It doesn't need. But what happens? So most poskim would say a toaster would need if like other electric appliances. Most poskim say electric appliances are no different just because they're electric and they're chayav. However, we're going to get to some exceptions. The Igros Moshe says though, by a toaster, he says a toaster is not chayav at all. That's in Yoreh Deah Chelik Beis. I think maybe 58 or something. He says toasters are not chayav at all because it's such a non-important shimush. Something that's so not important doesn't turn it into a clay seuda. Because you can eat your bread without toasting it. So he compares it. It's not the same, but he does compare it. Again, for the halachic purposes, it might be similar enough. I'm not arguing, but there's a machlokas by storage. Do storage containers need to be, here I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but that was another question. Do storage containers need to be tovel? So in the Pischei Tshuva in the beginning, in Seif Aleph, he quotes a machlokas. Some poskim say storage do and some don't. Because it's touching the food, and it's edible food, but it's storage. You're never using it while cooking. You're never using it at the table. So those type of storage containers, again, it could be in your pantry, like your extra, backup reserve. It could be in a storage house. That if it's glass we're talking about, or metal, so then storage containers isn't machlokas, and So that's a machlokas. So he just points he just points out that if by storage containers it's a machlokas, and you kind of need it, your food's going to fall on the floor. A toaster, you don't even need to toast your bread. You can eat it. It's already baked. So he says it's such a small shimush. He might be a das yachid, I don't know, but he says that.
That wouldn't apply, let's say, to a waffle iron.
A waffle iron.
Pouring a batter in. And then
You're cooking in it.
Right.
So it comes out, that's for sure a clay seudah. Yeah, anything you're cooking with or eating with, everyone says is a clay seudah. If you're only using it for raw items in its raw state, so that we're gonna maybe tomorrow I'm just gonna rattle through some quick actual specifics, but you mentioned that, so that is not anything that's in its raw state and never is used in its ready state. So that most poskim, the shach for sure, it says is 100% mutter. You do not need to. You don't need to tovel it. Like we mentioned, cookie cutters or rolling pins. If you use it for cooked food, so then it's chayav. But if you're buying it and only using it for
it's not edible now.
Something that's not edible now, like a dough, like for dough, so then those things are pater. And I just wanted to point out, if you look at the Star K website, B'Shem Rav Heinemann, he says if it's Lamaisa, he writes that, or it's written, for storage containers that are glass or ceramic, you don't need to bother. It's glass under Rabbanan, so it's a suffix of storage containers Rabbanan. But if it be metal, so then I believe most would say storage containers you should be a machmer without a bracha. Because metal might be, again, it depends if you want to just go with the 6 or all metal, but then the rice Rabbanan for storage containers, if you should have to total with a bracha or not. I think we'll finish tomorrow. Okay.